Hi, welcome to Sidewalk Talk. I'm Steve Fortunato. Today, this episode it is an inspirational story, and I hope it will inspire you as well, whatever situation you're in. It is a story of someone who has overcome and has moved forward and has done great things, not only for himself, but for others, in particular in the Western New York community. So we have with us David Schaub. David, welcome and thanks. And I know we talked off air, and you're willing to share your story. Um, uh, David, the start in life wasn't the greatest, and as a young man, you were in trouble a little bit. So before we get into the things that you do now, you're an entrepreneur. You create great events. You're a publisher. You have your own podcast. And I want to talk about all of those things. But why don't we start with, go ahead, tell us your story. Tell us your early days story and the things that you went through.
Yeah, first off, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate you. Yeah, and it's been great to get to know each other before we even hit record here. But yeah, so to dive right into it, I'm 33 now, but so 33 years. So let's summarize it as quickly as possible. And of course, you can let me fill in the gaps as you want me to. But yeah, so I grew up probably like a lot of people, in a single mom family. My dad wasn't around, wasn't much of a dad growing up. And my dad actually went to prison when I want to say I was 5. And so my parents didn't get along very well. They were believe it or not, I was planned, but it was more of my dad saying, hey, they were married for a couple of years, and he was just like, yeah, I guess I'll just do it to make you happy. And then actually my mom, when she was pregnant with me, my brother, I'm a twin brother, by the way. So if you're in Western New York and you see one of us walking around, one of us has 4 kids, it's not me. I'm not living a double life. But yeah, so my mom was 8 months pregnant with.
Is it identical twin?
An identical, yeah.
And you're both like 6'1,000, right?
Yeah, 6'7". So
yeah.
I'm married, but no kids. He's married,
Okay.
has 4 kids.
Gotcha.
They got married 10 years ago, and they started, popping them out. But
All right.
and he has twin girls too, which is hilarious. So did not skip a generation or anything. But that being said, so my mom was 8 months pregnant with me and my brother. And my dad's like, yeah, I don't really want to be a dad. She's, well, this isn't, there's no receipt. There's no, it's not irreversible. So I walked into that. I was born into that, and very angry household. I was around a lot of verbal and physical abuse. And my dad, when my mom eventually divorced him, he just short of burned our house down, just short of it, destroyed everything. And I legally could not meet him until I was 14. So my mom got remarried when I was, 8 or 9. And he was an alcoholic. So I had an alcoholic stepdad until I was 17. He abruptly left our family when I was 17, which didn't really kill me. It wasn't my dad, but obviously having that influence for whatever it was, 9 years or so. It wasn't. So I didn't have a really good influence of men around me growing up. And then my mom had 2 other kids, which are my 2 half sisters. Who were 2 and 8 when he left. So that obviously really devastated them. And I was arrested 5 times before I was 20. So the apple didn't fall too far from the tree, I guess, from the dad there. And but it was for a lot of dumb things, like running over mailboxes, lighting off fireworks in people's homes. I got into a fight. I got in a pretty good record for that. The guy I ended up beating up, I guess you would say, was his uncle was a Supreme Court judge for 44 years. So the lawyer said, Dave, you hit the wrong kid. I actually got a felony for it. And then I did 6 months of weekends where you literally drive yourself to jail on the weekend. So that was me at 20 years old, basically. And I actually got kicked out of college at a 0.86 GPA. This is in 2008. So that the Great Recession basically hit there. And so jobs were scarce. So I got a job selling Cutco, which are knives, kitchen cutlery. And which is hilarious because you think about, okay, a felon is selling knives in people's homes. It's kind of weird. So, but I turned out to be really good at it. I sold a lot of knives. I was the #1 rep in the region that year. And then that literally a year later, they gave me the keys to run my own office. So here I am at 22 years old with no business experience, negotiating a lease with all the money I've saved, and hiring receptionists, and then hiring sales reps. And, at one point I had about 80, 90 reps working under me in Jamestown, New York. So, but anyways, I left that at 26 years old. I did really well. We did $4.5 million in 5 years, to kind of give you some ideas and figures there. Went to vacation to Hawaii. Took my mom to Hawaii, took my brother to Panama and South America, took my sister to Europe for 2 weeks, and yada, yada, yada. Bought a house and So anyways, at 26, I realized I was outgrowing it. So I left and bought a franchise for a publishing company, got 5 employees to work for me for that. And then I started motivational speaking, leadership speaking across the country for 2 years, wrote 2 books. And then I do a couple other different things. I started a podcast, and I'll stop there. To me, I get bored very quickly. It kind of, I guess I hate the term serial entrepreneur. It's almost watered down these days, but
Yeah, true.
I guess it's a simple, lame terms to put it.
So, I mean, first thing that comes to my mind is, yeah, you've done a lot of things in the last really 10 years, which is amazing. After your upbringing, and you mentioned it right away, you didn't really have a male role model. That usually serves as a problem for a lot of people. It's a real problem in America right now. So, did you ever find a male role model, or how did you bust that cycle? What was your secret?
Yeah, that was a great question. So for me, my very first male role model was, or role model in general, honestly, believe it or not, was my mom. So I know
Okay.
an outside perspective, okay, your mom, didn't. I want to answer that question 2 different ways, but the first
Okay.
one was my mom. So I know an outside perspective. You go, your mom married, she picked 2 bad men to kind of have with your childhood. I understand that, but a lot of us are just doing the best with what we know and what we have. Sometimes, really growing up and whatnot, and a lot of times hurt people do things that, I don't know about you, but when I'm hurting, when things aren't going well in my life, I make bad decisions, right? So that being said, my mom really, they gave her story in 30 seconds or less, is when she finally divorced Tom, she basically went back to school. And so raising 5 kids, working 3 jobs,
Mm.
going back to school to get her degree, and while battling cancer,
Oh, wow.
breast cancer, and she survived it and whatnot. And all that in a relative short period of time. So for me, I saw that, and I saw my mom like learning typing. Like she got this, back then we had CD-ROMs, right? We put it into
Yeah.
the computer, and we would, learn how to type. And I remember my mom doing that to midnight and going, Mom, why are you working so hard?
Wow.
You got to work at 6 in the morning, then you have to work your second job. Then, it was just, I saw my mom struggle, but she never gave up in the perseverance. So I just saw that, and that really hit home with me. Okay, if my mom can do this and get a job, she eventually became a U.S. Customs officer. And I just saw her rise above there, and I'm like, wow, like that was my first almost role model that I'm realizing. And my second was a name of Justin Neefus, and he was my first manager in Cutco. With the Cutler Company. And for once, I saw someone doing something versus saying. How many people do we know that, in fact, one of my favorite quotes is, I can't hear what you're saying because your actions are speaking so loud. So for Justin, he was a quiet guy. Of course, he can get us motivated, but he was more of just do it as I do. Just work hard, do the right things, have integrity, but outwork everybody. And for once, I saw that. I just stuck to glue like that to him, and just really modeled everything I did in business after him. And I just, I thank God seriously so much that as I found out more in the business world, as I got older, I'm like, man, there's a lot of people that cut corners, that don't do the right things, that just whatever gets the results, even if it's not the right thing to do. And I'm like, man, I'm so lucky to have this person at such a young age, to my early 20s, to really just watch and grow with. So yeah, I guess that's answer your question. I'll stop there.
That's awesome. What do you stay in what's his first name?
His name's Justin, and he
Justin.
lives in Ohio now. He's actually a division manager, so he's in control of an entire state now.
Oh,
And
that's great.
yeah, actually, when the Bills played Cleveland, the Browns, I caught up with them, stayed at
Oh,
his house, and yeah, so we still catch up.
good, good. Well, your mom sounds like an amazing woman. That is a strong person. So I think, yeah, I think it was interesting when you said it's great that she's your role model, but you didn't really realize it, right? You
Yeah.
probably, but you just absorbed it.
Well, you know what? It just kind of shows that people are watching when you don't even realize what you're
Yeah.
doing, right? So, oh, it doesn't matter. No one sees this, or, the kids are too young, or whatever you want to call it, right? I wasn't really young watching my mom, but my mom probably didn't, not that she didn't care. Of course, she cared about us, but she was just working so hard. And again, it's just, how many times do we say that's just, like, we just don't think people are watching us, but we do. And we're influencing people even without our words, right? So people are watching, people are seeing you, especially your kids. And if you think they're not catching the little things that are not integrity, or when they see you cut corners, trust me, they're seeing it. Because if you're doing it once, you're probably subconsciously not even realizing you're doing it over and over and over again. And then that's what I think it's huge. In fact, I'm not a kid. I'm not a parent, but I think parenting is the most important job in the world. I really
There's no
believe that.
doubt. It's the most difficult, most important, and most rewarding job. I'm a parent of two, and I always wanted to be a dad. I waited a long time. I wasn't a dad until I was in my 40s.
Mhm.
The greatest thing ever. It's the
Yeah,
great,
like
and
that's
it's
how we're
very
gonna
difficult. It's
we want to
difficult.
change the world. What we'll just change our household first, right? We can
Yeah.
change the world, but I think that's your house is your most important. I don't want to call it an asset because that's not the word I want to use for it. But if we're not leading our homes well, how the heck, in my opinion, we have no right leading others. If we're not leading our homes and our families and our kids, um, we should never leave them behind.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree with that more. I talk about that all the time. I think the biggest issue in the U.S. is kids growing up in a difficult household, right? Maybe it's not a standard household one, a single parent, and the parent might be trying their best and doing the best they can, but that parent's human. I can't imagine being a single parent, how difficult that is, because it's difficult being a parent with two parents. Being a single parent, that's a tough job. Then you get into the whole education situation. How can we improve that? How can we help our kids with better education? Is there a person though? I mean, or is there a time, not a person? Is there a specific time? You mentioned 5 times in jail. I think before 20. Or was there some time that you just said that there's not going to be a sixth, or was it the fourth? There's not going to be a fifth. Was the third? There's not going to be a fourth. Was there one time where you said that's it? It needs to change, and then eventually, obviously, it did. Was there a time?
Yeah, yeah. So I wrote it in my book when I talked about kind of everybody has that moment where they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, or the light bulb hits right. And I think sometimes we have to let people hit rock bottom. We have to let people do it because often if they're clinging onto that last glimpse of hope, like I don't have to change, or someone's going to come rescue me. A lot of times we have to let them do that because if they're really going sideways, is what I'm trying to say, right? So that being said, my moment was when I was 20 years old and I just did one of my weekends. I called them my weekend getaways as a joke. My friends always called them my weekend getaways. But so I was in jail my 20th and my 21st. I got arrested on my 20th. Not I didn't get arrested on my birthday. I got arrested a couple days before and they held me for a couple more days. And then the 21st was told to be of course, it was on a
On the
weekend, right?
weekend,
Like
right?
in sense. So that being said, I came home and I remember just after your weekend, you miss everybody, including your annoying little sisters, right? So I came home and I just, first person I saw was my little sister, Natalie, at the time. She was probably 5 or 4 or whatever she was, very little, in her little like onesies running around. And I said, "Hey, Natalie, I miss you. Give me a hug." And she goes, "Go back to jail." And she like ran away and she laughed, not knowing the bomb she just dropped in my heart. And it just hit me. I went, "Oh my God." If I don't know why it just hit me so hard. I went, oh my God, if I like die today, if I like got in a car accident or something like that, I'm gonna be remembered as like David the Menace, the person that just did nothing with their life, that just did nothing. Like it was just this, criminal, I guess you would say, not this crazy criminal, but I did nothing with my life. And I went, oh my gosh. And I just sat in my room because I was in a ranch house of 3 bedrooms and there's 5 kids. So I literally went in my basement, my room, and I just cried. And I just sat there at holy cow, I have to do something. I have to make something of myself. I have to, take a next step in my journey to become who I was meant to be. And I don't even know what the heck that is, what that's going to look like, but I'm just going to take a next step, one little next step at a time. And that's kind of how my journey began.
What's the name of that book?
It's called Never Complete.
Never Complete?
Yeah, so it's the preference of it is just becoming who you're meant to be, one next step at a time. And I think sometimes in the world, the culture is we have to have it together now. We have to almost like we're grown up that we think our destiny is a destination, like it's something that we arrive at. But I'm a firm believer it's not a destination. It's it's a journey of taking a next step of who you're meant to be, whether you're 40, 80, 8, 18. It doesn't really matter who you are. We all have a next step to take, and often we think our next step is to do something. I have to do something, but our lives are so busy, right? Like I can't imagine, how many times we look at our to-do list and we're happy if half of it gets done because we get sidetracked and other things call our name. But for me, often our next step is to get rid of something, to remove something, to create space for something better. Like for me, when I was in my 20s, I realized that I need to not necessarily accumulate better friends. I need to get rid of some friends so I can create space for better friendships. I don't necessarily need to, have a better relationship with, maybe I just need to get out of an unhealthy relationship to create space for that, right? Or you get my point here. So a lot
Yeah.
of times we have to get rid of stuff so we can create space for something better in our life. And so basically my book is about how imperfect I am. It is not how to have it all together. It is not how great I am. In fact, you'll read this book, you're like, dude, I can't believe you're admitting this. You know what? This is me. This is my story. This is who I am. And let me tell you how untogether I have it, if that's even a word. I'm just like how untogether I have it together. And then let me show you how empowered I can still feel, knowing how imperfect I am, how many mistakes I make and still make today. Like you ask my wife, if she's being honest, if she's being really brutally honest, she's like, yeah, Dave's still working on things, right? But we can be empowered despite having it all together. And I just think that's so important, not just as young adults, but in life. Like, it's totally okay. In fact, embrace it, not
I
having
love
it
it.
all together.
Well, I just literally had a meeting this morning, and our company, Sidewalk, is a marketing firm, and we talk about this all the time. The reason that what you talk about is connects is because it's really you. I mean, so we say, you know, don't be perfect, be human.
Mhm.
You know, don't be perfect, don't be polished, don't, you know, just be yourself, be you. And in the marketing world, right, this, that's what people want. That's who they connect with, is when you just are yourself. And most people are never complete. So I love where you go with this. And I think it's real. And that's why it would connect, is because, it isn't a how-to book and how to have everything and be perfect. It sounds like it's more of it's okay. You're normal. We never all have it together. The reason is there is no such thing as perfection. It's always that the to-do list is always half complete. And it's what you do with it that counts. Where you go, where you want to go, and who you want to help and how you want to help them, that matters. And if you can just admit your imperfections and embrace your imperfections, you're going to connect with a lot more people and you're
Yeah.
going to feel fulfilled,
I've
right?
connected way better without having it together, more than pretending I have it together ever could. But one thing that, that I just believe that if we're truly ever going to grow as a person, we have to have honest questions with honest answers. And often we know the questions we have to ask ourselves, and we even know the answers. It's just implementing that, right, is the hardest part. And one thing that people say, Dave, you get, when you're on a podcast or whenever I'm speaking, well, how you been so successful, and and all these other things. And for me, I'm a big implementer. I'm not innovator. I'm not a creator. I don't have it all together. I just, as soon as I learn something or I really figure something, I'm like, I don't like this about me, or I don't like this about my life, or I don't like this about this aspect. What do I need to do? Oh, I know I need to do. I know what I need to do. And but most of us, we leave it at that. Why? It's too hard. What are people going to think about me? Well, what am I going to appease these people? Or it's going to be really hard. And often we love change, but we hate transition. We love the idea of change. Of course, I'd love to, like, let me maybe an example. I'd love to lose 20 pounds. I hate the transition, which is the diet part, right?
Yep.
I love the change of, I'd love to date somebody that's more for me, that's
Yep.
better for me. But I hate the transition of breaking up, like, which is hard. And then being alone, and the transition of being more independent now. And then actually taking the time to get to know someone, to find out they are Mr. Right or Mrs. Right, right? And that we love the idea of change. We hate transition. It's scary. It's a mystery. And how is it going to go? What if it doesn't work out? But we have to be okay with transition. We have to embrace it to do that. And we have to let go of pleasing everybody. Often our yes is a no somewhere else. Yeah, I'm saying yes to this person, but I'm saying no to this. And which is better? You're saying no to something. The question is, what are you saying no to? And is that fruitful for you? So really, I just like to ask honest questions in the book. This is me messing up. This is me messing up over and over and over again. Some things that are not my fault, some things that are my fault, and a little mix of both. But these are questions I ask myself on a pretty regular basis in these situations. So let me ask you these questions now. And it's just, and that's it, right? Just, and each chapter is kind of going into that. One's about leadership. One's about unhealthy relationships. Man, I was the unhealthy one in the relationships. And let me tell you how unhealthy it was. And let me almost brag about how crappy of a boyfriend I was. Let me brag about how horrible of a person I was at some points. But let me tell you what I've learned in this and this and that and this and that. And let me ask these questions so I can at least save you some heartache that I at least went through. That is all my fault in some cases.
Did you ever think before about, I know you did speaking, did you think about being an author? I mean, is this just something you just did, and now you're in publishing? I mean, how did this happen? I mean, how do you just write a book?
Well, writing a book is way easier than most people think. The hardest part is writing the first draft because we want it to be perfect, right? You want it to be like a finished product when you start and again, a lot of us have a fear of what are people going to say? Is this not grammatically correct? Is this not a good enough story? There's so many books out there. Where would mine can't possibly measure up, and I don't have the connections to do this. And I had neither of that. It was just, you know what? I locked myself in my room for a week. I told my friends and family, if I don't answer your text, I'm alive, I promise. I'm not ignoring you. I'm writing a book. In fact, I don't even think I told them writing a book because I didn't want them asking questions about it. I literally said, hey, I'm busy next week. Please don't be bothered or worry. And I think I put my thing on auto on my emails and my texts, like an auto sent out or auto responder. And I locked myself in my home office and I wrote 10,000 words a day. And I had an idea of what I wanted to write, but it changes as you write. Oh, I realized I want to talk more about this. And next thing you know, your book has a mind of its own because it's your story. It's flowing out of you. I cried writing my book. It was therapeutic. I talked about it. I wanted it to be raw and real. And I just wrote it. And chapters changed. I thought I was going to have it this way. And it's fine. Just let it flow. And then after I read it, after I wrote it, then I reread it again. And I fixed some things and yada, yada, yada. I'm horrible at grammar. In fact, I failed English, so this kind of showed you that part in school. And thank God for editors, because they're the ones that take care of it. And I had, edited, and then I had, people read it, and then I self-published it. You can self-publish to a lot of different. I didn't really care to become a #1 best-selling author. I just wanted to share my story. And 95% of my book sales were when I was done speaking. Most people don't read a book unless it was either recommended or they feel a crazy amount of marketing, or because they saw you speak and like, I really resonate with this person. I'd love to hear more of their story. So I would sell my books at the end of my speech with students or staff members or teachers, or maybe I was speaking at a conference where a lot of parents were at, which is weird. I've spoken at parent conferences and I've never been a parent, it's just, but people want to know how to connect with the younger generation, whatever you want to call it. The point is that we all are human, using your words there. We all have problems. We all want to get better. We all want to grow. And more importantly, as parents, we want to help our kids navigate this world and become independent adults, because we can't be there 24/7. How do we build this foundation? How do we get the wired them to think a certain way? And so that's kind of how I did that. So sorry if I went off on a tangent there.
No, it's awesome. It's something I didn't anticipate us talking about. Again, if it can inspire somebody. So somebody, you mentioned, I know a lot of people that have we'll call it content, because I can't think of a better word right now. It's the word content's in our heads all the time now with marketing, but they have great content or ideas or stories that should be shared, but they're not sharing it, whether it's through podcasts or a book. And I get that too. The written word for me is much more difficult than the spoken word. And I think part of it is what you said. Oh, grammatically, it's going to be incorrect, which we are grammatical. I always tell people, don't worry about your grammar. Don't, just be who you are. But the written word is different. So it's pretty inspirational what you said about you locked yourself in your room for a week. Okay, take us to that person who's like, okay, well, I can do that. I'll try that. I'll write it, but it's still going to suck, or it's going to be so many errors. How did you find somebody or an editor to look at it, to help you? Who did you find? Where do you go to do that? Because I feel like if people knew, hey, those steps are doable, you don't have to be a New York Times bestseller, then maybe they would take those steps. So if they knew in advance, I don't have to worry about it now, I'll worry about it later. But
Yeah.
there are opportunities to find an editor. Where do you just find an editor? What did you do?
There's a lot of freelance websites, so I used Upwork. So I
Mm-hmm.
basically put editor. This is my budget, to do that, because you could spend $500, you could spend $15,000 for
Yeah.
editor. Depends on, what you want. And I looked at reviews. So honestly, I just, just like, Google's a beautiful thing. How
Mm-hmm.
do I self-publish my book? How do I do this the right way? And, if you have the budget, you can pay somebody to do all this for you, basically kind of like a realtor or a stager. They can help you stage the home to sell more, whatever. So, so to me, I didn't really want to do that. I just kind of want to do it my own way. But I think it's great if people do that. Take someone that's an expert in the book publishing industry and use their expertise, right? They've done this 100 times. You've done this 0 times in this case, right? So I think that's really cool. I honestly, I didn't find out about that stuff until after, but
Hmm.
that being said, freelancers are a great way, and people that have, again, I look at their resume. How many books have they edited? I want to see, and I want to see how other books are doing as well, and you can see that stuff. So, yeah.
So go online and do it, is what you're saying.
Yeah, don't overcomplicate. A lot of
Yeah,
times we think of reasons why we can't do
no
something, and
doubt.
a lot of it is just fear, and fear that paralyzes us or propels. And honestly, I do my best work when I'm afraid. I know it sounds weird. I just when I'm backed in a corner, I just maybe sometimes I'm just, and in fact, I'm just really thankful that I went through what I went through as a child, because I'm like, man, that really prepared me to learn how to handle really chaotic situations. Like I was around chaos my whole life. so,
Yeah.
so let's be honest, if we, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but if we're parents that constantly coddle and keep our kids away from chaos constantly, how are they going to learn how to thrive in chaos? Because let's be honest, when they're adults, are they going to have someone shelter from chaos? No. I'm not saying we should purposely put them in chaos and stuff like that. What I'm trying to say is that often we don't want to take our kids away from things. We want to teach them how to go through things. And like, hey, like this is a hard situation. What do you think you should do? Versus this is what you need to do. Like, what do you think you should do? How are you feeling right now? What do you think you should do? And okay, cool. And then you just walk them through that. And kids are smart. They get it. And and yes, they need to be corrected sometimes. And of course we do. At least I did. I need to be corrected a lot, but just helping them learn how to handle emotions and failure. And how did you feel about that? Not just, hey, let's go get ice cream because you had a bad game. Like, yeah, that's fun sometimes. You want to, love them. I love the heart behind it. But sometimes people have to sit in their feelings and learn how to process that, because when you're an adult, we want them to process it as very well. So I'm very thankful I had to go through stuff because my mom was working 3-4 jobs. I did a lot on my own, and I learned a lot on my own. And then teaching your kid how to process, at least for me, going to books, learning these things. And anyways, I'll stop there because I can keep going on a
No, it's
tangent. But
fun. I think you can take that lesson into entrepreneurship too, when you have, or not just that, or managers and businesses, when you're in a leadership position and you're a teacher. So we're all teachers at some point, and is the best way to teach. The easiest thing to do would be to say, do it this way.
mhm,
This is the way it should. Or is it better to say, what do you think we should do? And never know, they might come up with a solution that's actually better than yours.
yeah.
And then you can implement that solution.
And see, and that's
Yeah,
leadership right there, right?
right.
If we always come up with answers with people, they're always going to come to us for answers. Versus, what do you think you should do? Before
Yeah,
actually, I have an idea what I should do. In fact, I kind of have my perfect answer, but I don't want my perfect answer. What do you think you should do? And
exactly.
let them come up. And in fact, with my team, I say, hey guys, before you bring a problem to me, I want you to have at least 2 ideas of what could be the solution. You cannot come to me with a problem. And come to me a problem if you have a problem. Don't get me wrong, but I want you to have at least 2 ideas of a solution. Even if you're not sure they would work, at least bring 2 ideas of solutions. And I'm telling you what, a lot of the problems were being solved before, because they're like, you know what, that is a good solution, because we teach them to come up with solutions before bringing problems to people. So now if they can't solve it, still they come to me, but I think this might work. I think that might work. I just teaching them, wiring them to do that is huge, I think, especially for as an entrepreneur. Teaching people how to be problem solvers. How else are they going to be leaders if they're constantly being micromanaged?
Yeah. And micromanaging works for some. It doesn't happen to work for me as a manager or as a person that needs to be taught something. But everyone's wired differently, and I think is in leadership you have to figure out how that person is wired. And if in my situation, if someone that's working with me, because no one works for me, they work with me. If someone's working with me, and they absolutely need to be micromanaged, well, then that's my fault because I should not have hired that person. I should not have put him in that position. If it's a position of, I don't want you to be micromanaged. I want you to learn and bring ideas to us.
Yep.
And we can learn together, because I don't know everything. I don't, I have a lot to learn. And so if we can learn together, then we can grow together, and that'll be a better
Yeah,
end result.
and to kind of go back to what we were saying here, like for me, it's like let's say you have 50 employees, right? Like let's say you have 5 managers, one for each of the 10, right? A different section, what you're going to call it. So I don't want obviously all 50. It's more of the leaders. So how do I teach those leaders, all those people? Because you're right. Some people like some people is like, hey, just tell me what to do and I'll just do it. I don't want to be a problem solver. I just tell me what to do. I'll put my head to the grindstone. That's awesome, right?
Yep.
So that's the case, then they should be more of someone of that nature, right? And
Right.
we should work the people's strengths. But if someone's a leader of people, I want them to be problem solvers, and I want them to of course come to you when you need something, but let's come up with some solutions first before we do that.
Yeah, no doubt. Talk to me about N2 Publishing. So you have you're a franchise owner. Uh, what is N2 Publishing? Well, I kind of know what it is. So you work with communities, but you just in Western New York. And what's really cool about it, the neighborhood or the community members, it's a magazine for the community members, written by the community members. Like two things. Tell me if I'm on target here. I think I am. And how you got into this.
Yeah. So yes, N2 Publishing, basically we just work with affluent neighborhoods and produce neighborhood magazine for them, written by the residents for the residents. So you nailed it. So goes about, I know every franchise is different, but so yeah, so basically the most affluent neighborhoods, the residents write it, and it comes out every month. We do their neighborhood events like their Christmas parties, Easter egg hunts. So I have employees that really do that for me at this point, and we're just good fits for businesses that really want to reach those types of communities on a relational level. Not a instant gratification ROI click, pay per click. But anyways, how I got into that is I used to work for Cutco back in the early 20s, and a lot of friends that have left Cutco, I purchased a franchise for that in different cities, like in Chicago, Nashville, and California, Pittsburgh. And so when I left Cutco, in fact, I didn't talk about this. When I left, I literally left cold turkey. I had nothing planned. So at 26 years of age, I called it my quarter life crisis, Steve. What I literally did is I quit I literally stopped working for Cutco that morning. I literally woke up and I said, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. And I went to my reception and said, here's a couple weeks pay. You have a great day. Thank you for everything you've done. She goes, yeah, I could tell your heart wasn't in it anymore. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not growing anymore. I need to grow. I need to learn. And after 6 years, I don't want to say I mastered it, but I learned everything I could. And I was ready for something different. I broke up with my girlfriend like a week earlier. And it was right before Christmas, a couple weeks, 3-4 weeks before Christmas. And I had a house and I had 2 cars. I had a winter car, a summer car. And remember, I have a record and I have no degree. And I'm 26. My family thought I was crazy. Dave, what are you doing? Like, you had a great job, a career, you built it up. Why would you do that? I'm like, I can't, I have to do something different. And I rather lose everything than just be apathetic for the next 25 years until I retire. I just can't do it. And I left and I had nothing. I said, I know this is not how it works, but I'm like, God, I'm going to give you 2 weeks and maybe I'll put a resume together. I had no clue what I was going to do, Steve. 0 clue. And it was so funny how like 2 weeks later, I got a call from N2 saying, Dave, we kind of heard who you are through the grapevine. We know you did great things in Buffalo, and we know who you are through other people. And can we have a discussion about this, you being part of a franchise in Buffalo? We never had a franchise in Buffalo. We have one in Rochester and in Syracuse, but not in Buffalo. So anyways, we did a couple of weeks of phone calls. I went out to Chicago. Here I am. So it's great. It's an amazing company, and I love delegating everything I don't like doing and working. So to me, as an entrepreneur, it's just chasing your passion and delegating things you hate doing. And basically monetizing what you love doing and solving problems through your passion. To me, that's entrepreneurship. So that's
So
kind of
what
how
are
I
the things right now that you love doing with N2 Publishing?
So I'm an entrepreneur at heart,
Mm.
and I love connecting with people. So Steve, when we connected originally before this, I'm like, I want to know who Steve is. I want to know what he's about. I want to know what sucks, what is great. I want to know who I can connect him with or help him with. I'm a connector and I'm a sharer. So if this is the best water I ever had in my life, I want everyone I love to have it. I'll send you each a case of this water or coffee or food or I love sharing. So for me, when I learn stuff in books, I love sharing. So for me, so with N2, I connect with all these amazing affluent people, which 95% were entrepreneurs of some type, CEOs.
Mm.
So I connect with them, learn with them. And that's kind of helped me build. And people can tell when you actually really care versus how are you? What do you do? They just you can tell there's a hidden agenda there.
Yep.
So with me, I'm like, dude, I don't care if this, because how I make money is advertising, right? They advertise in these magazines. I say, hey, listen, if this doesn't work, I don't really care. Of course, does it work? Great. I love getting paid just as much as the next person. But if it doesn't work, I don't care. I at least want to leave you knowing who you are, what you do, what are you about, what has worked, what has not worked for you. And people just genuinely appreciate that. And to me, that's really how I've built the foundation here in Western New York and the Buffalo area. And that kind of led to the podcast, which I do now, and how I gotten so many guests on there. And I guess I'll stop there so I can keep going. But that's kind of what I love about N2 is connecting with high level entrepreneurs and really picking their brain.
Where events are a part of this. You do progressive dinners. Was that your idea, or is that part of the N2 plan? Is that
N2 model.
it
So
is?
yeah.
Okay.
So again, I'm not a
That's
creative
perfect,
person.
but that's
I'm just
perfect for you.
simple.
That's the kind of stuff you like.
I love it. I do it for free. I love speaking in front of people. I love just be like, hey guys, thanks for coming. Like, this is awesome. Like, nobody brings a cup of sugar over anymore. You get the awkward wave when you actually make eye contact with the dog walker. Like, isn't this great? Like, I love this. Like, you guys get to connect with people. So I'm creating an environment of connection between residents and residents. So they get to hang with their neighbors. And I'm creating an environment for a few business owners who RSVP'd to connect with them on a relational level. And yeah, what are the odds I'm needing a real estate agent, a plumber, an electrician that day? I don't know, maybe slim to none. But you're probably going to go with somebody when you need that service that you've actually connected with, you met with. And I get to foster that. And if you're anything like me, Steve, or anybody that's listening, maybe you're like me, where you didn't have connections growing up. I didn't have the connections. I wasn't a connected individual at all. So here I'm a sharer. I get these connections. Who wants a connection? Who wants to build genuine, honest relationships? And I love connecting with people that do that. And N2 lets me do that. That built that. The podcast lets me do that. The events with that. Everything I've learned from that and from speaking, and I've learned and carried it over to the podcast. And Dave, where are you going to be at 10 years from now? I have no idea. And I don't really care.
Hmm.
So for me, I'm just sitting here going like, okay, what does God have for me here? And what next steps can I take here? And what do I feel like these passions are pulling me up here? What problems do I see that need to be solved that I feel like I'm good at? And what can I delegate? And what can I bring with me to do that? And that's where my mind is always going. And if I look in the mirror too many days in a row, I'm like, I don't like what I'm doing, or I don't feel good. I don't feel like I'm growing, even as a husband. Like, we have these visioneer meetings once, I call them a quarter meetings, where I say, how am I doing as a husband? Like, no BS, hurt my feelings if you have to. What do I need to improve? How am I growing? How are we really doing? What do we want to be at in 6 months from now, a year from now? And I want to know this. I guess that kind of comes from the deep soul or in depth, where I don't want to waste my life. I want to be intentional with everything I do, and I want to be meaning and passion, purpose behind it. And it's not going to be perfect. It's going to suck sometimes, and sometimes it's going to be dead ends. And why did that door close? But when you're being intentional, and when you're loving others, you're treating people well, and you're working hard, and you're using your gifts that you feel like God has called you to do. I just think that, like, you're taking a next step every day, and sometimes you take 3 steps back to move another step forward. But, like, you get my point. Like, that's kind of where my brain flows every single day.
So it's not just, it was interesting because you used, what'd you call the quarterly?
Quarterly, like vision. I call it visioneering.
And so, I mean, it's great because we do that in business, right? You're supposed to, but in life too. To me, that's what you're saying, is do that in life, not just
Yeah.
business you're operating.
Yeah, like, and I mean, I'm not a bodybuilder. I don't run Ironman races,
Mhm.
but I'm like, what do I want to be at fitness wise? Like I love playing volleyball. I want to make sure I'm doing that twice a week. And I used to do it 4 or 5. Then I got married. Then stopped doing that. And
Yeah.
in my relationships, not just my wife, even though that's
Yeah.
that's numero uno, right? But
Mhm.
for me, I'm like, how am I being a good son to my dad, right? So I have a relationship with my dad, and we have a great relationship with my dad now, 2-3 times, and he's not perfect, and we just like me. I'll forget him for a second. I have stuff I'm working on, and when you realize again that hurt people just hurt people, and you realize that when you learn from their past and what they're doing, not to give them excuses, but you just realize that like people are often doing the best with what we have and with the way we were wired and growing up, and it's just and I think the biggest thing for me, not to go off topic here, but I think the hardest part is that when we find it really hard to forgive others, it's because we realize that we're not forgiving ourselves. I can't forgive somebody else. I can't imagine doing that if I haven't forgiven myself yet for being imperfect, for not being the best, or even just my thoughts. Man, I can't believe I'm even thinking that I'm judging this person, even if I didn't verbally say it. But I can forgive myself for that. And when we start doing that, we can forgive others. And for me, that was one big breaking moment for me. I wrote in my book was forgiving not just my dad, but forgiving myself, because I just, for the things that I've done in my life, I didn't murder anybody. But the point is that even if you did, you're forgiving yourself. How can you forgive others if you're holding on to things? It's really tough. It's like almost impossible. So, unless you're really good at faking it.
Right.
But anyways,
People usually figure the fake stuff out, though. That's why the whole thing is that's why you need to be authentic and you need to be real and be human.
yeah.
All right. So I want the podcast itself. So the podcast started after N2 Publishing, but it's a podcast strictly for Western New Yorkers, Buffalo, Western New York, right? Isn't that's why the name of the podcast is Western New York Entrepreneur. Well, that would tell me that it's for Western New Yorkers. Tell me why, because a lot of people want to be worldwide. I want to talk to the entire world. You want to put your eggs in the basket of Western New York and Western New York entrepreneurs and connecting people that way. Why is that?
Yeah, so I think sometimes we want to impact the world, but sometimes we have to. Our mission field is just our area of influence. And
Mm.
so for me, I saw a hole. I saw a problem, kind of like entrepreneurship, solving a problem with your passions. And I sat there and I went, there are so many amazing podcasts out there, like Fortune 500 CEOs, and I don't have those connections. So for me, I was sitting here going, but what about the amazing entrepreneurs in Western New York? Like, why don't we capitalize? I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't know about you, Steve, but sometimes I listen to a podcast. I'm like, okay, this person's in Greenland, this person's
Mm.
in California or Florida, right? Or whatever. We know that different cultures, things that work in different areas of the world don't necessarily mean they're going to work in your area, right? Because different cultures, different things, different needs. Sometimes an area needs this type of category, but this one's saturated, right? So my point is that I mean, well, I want to learn from entrepreneurs that have done it here. And I'm like, so I'm on this journey of learning all throughout the years to my N2 publishing from all these business owners that either have advertised with me or lived in the neighborhoods that I've worked with. And I'm like, I want to share. I'm a sharer. And when I quit motivational speaking, because I was on a plane every week, and I sat there and went, well, I don't want to be an absent husband or even eventually an absent father. So I'm going to quit motivational speaking, which was tough because I loved doing it. But now I can impact the local. So that's kind of how my thinking came into creating that podcast.
Hmm. Yeah, the motivational speaking, and we didn't touch on that too much, but yeah, you gave that up after a couple of years because you wanted to be a husband, right? And you didn't feel that. Do you think your upbringing influenced that decision?
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, yeah, for me, I just, I don't want to make the mistake. Sometimes you learn from your own mistakes, but I like learning from other people's too, as well. And I've learned one thing I realized in the business field, just from observing, just being an observationist, is that a lot of people that are really good at business are they're on their, I don't want to offend anybody, but they're on their third marriage. Or their kids don't even know who they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know a lot of affluent business owners that are amazing people, amazing parents, amazing, dads, right? Whatever, moms, right? And I know some that are just like, you can tell that just consumes them. And I went, I don't want that. I want this. So before I even got married, I saw myself with a couple of guys and I said, hey, can you guys just mentor me? Like, what is it like to be a business owner, being busy and being a good husband? I want both. I don't want to be a businessman with a family. I want to be a family man with a business who just so happens to run a business. And I got shout out to so many great guys in the area and even out of the area that just poured into me and learned. And again, just through their, just not even just pouring into me like one-on-one, but pouring into me from just because I watched them. I know it sounds weird, but I watched people, just observed them and see, how do they talk to their wives? Because I didn't even know what it looked like. All I knew was anger.
Mm.
You did this wrong. I'm going to let you know and hurt you back physically or verbally. And that's all I really knew. I really had to learn before I even got into another relationship, let alone get married, that I had to rewire myself. But going back to the podcast, I just saw that Buffalo, specifically Western New York area, was stuck, in my opinion, this is just one person's opinion, was stuck in the 90s in terms of networking. It was just the same thing over and over again. Someone does a presentation, everybody does their 30-second elevator pitch, and it's like the same thing, but just put a different logo on it or a different networking name to it. And I went, there's a better way. And when I've been to 44 of the 50 states, and I'm like, there's just so much potential here in Buffalo. Like, again, I got sick of waiting for it. So I'm like, let me throw events that have deeper meaning and deeper connecting, just a different way, not necessarily a better way, just a different way. The way that I would love to create, again, I like creating culture and events that foster real, genuine connection, relationships, and sharing. And I want everyone that comes to the event to feel that. And I want to create that. And I got sick of waiting for it. So that's why I created it.
What, do you have COVID put a little bit of a dent in some of those plans, right? Do you have an upcoming event?
Yeah, it's actually this Wednesday, but it's sold out in 16 hours. So again, I'm super grateful and thankful. And I mean, I'm just so thankful. So we're doing an in-person event. We've kept it under 50 for COVID guidelines, but we do a different event every month. We don't do the same event. So for example, we did one in November before everything got shut down again. We did a 90-person networking event in person at the new Seneca One Tower, which is like the tallest building in Buffalo. It got renovated. And to keep it under COVID guidelines, we kept 33 or 30 in each section. And then we would do like a progressive dinner and we'd switch where they would go around the building. So they wouldn't it was really cool. So everybody would meet each other, but we had masks on, the whole 9 yards. And then when COVID hit last year, April, March, I should say, but April, we did 100-person virtual networking event on Zoom. And we had a lot of cool big name speakers on there that are big in the Western New York area, I should say. And so that never really stopped us. And honestly, my network and our subscribers and listeners tripled during COVID.
Wow.
So there's always a gift in every horrible situation. Like, what is the gift? And when there's new problems, there needs to be new solutions. So what worked before the pandemic isn't necessarily going to work during the pandemic. Or now that we're post-pandemic, we can't just expect things to go back to normal. What new problems are arising that we can solve? Where can we pivot?
Right.
And that's why I'm constantly thinking, okay, like I'm seeing this problem. How do we solve this?
Right. So the events that you have are under the premise of the podcast.
Yep.
Like you said at the time of this recording, it's March of 2021. So pandemic is 1 year old, but I can't remember the percentage of people that are now vaccinated. And so things are slowly opening up a little bit more. What's the name? The name this Wednesday? What's the name of this event? Do you have a different name each time, or what's the umbrella?
We usually name it like the place that it's at. So we call it the K House Networking Events, and then the other one is the Seneca One Networking Event. So we try to get everything strategic. We think, okay, what is a good place that's going to benefit the space and is going to benefit us, and what do people want to know? Like, so this is a new really modern co-working space in Buffalo, where the guy that owns it runs a capital ventures firm. So startups would love to probably meet someone like that and at least pick their brain on that. So it's a really cool space. We have to throw an event here, and plus they just opened like 2-3 months ago. So I was like, this is going to really benefit them, getting entrepreneurs in there and getting people the word out there. It's going to benefit us because it benefits everyone. Like no one's. It's just, I'm just trying to think about that all the time. Like, what is next? What can we learn? What can we grow here? Getting feedback from people and just trying to listen.
We'll wrap it up here. I went over the time that I told you we would do, but before we do, you mentioned something. You have a great relationship with your dad. What's the situation with your mom and your dad? To update us.
Yeah, so obviously they got divorced,
Yeah.
when I
What
was
about
young.
your relationship with them? Tell me about your relationship with your father. That's interesting.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I love my dad. And I always make
Yeah.
sure I tell him that, like, Dad, I've forgiven you, right? And what's tough, one thing that, he doesn't listen to podcasts. He's like 62 years old. So,
Mhm.
but I tell him this all the time, like, Dad, like, I've forgiven you a long time ago, right? I love you. When I see you, I don't see brokenness. I don't see shame. I don't see, I wish. I see, man, I get to have a relationship with you right now. Like I get to, I don't care, obviously, water under the bridge. And a lot of times when we forgive people, by the way, I want to say this real quick.
Yeah.
Here's the misconception of forgiveness. People think when I forgive someone, that means it didn't matter. Oh, it didn't matter anyways, or
Mhm.
it was actually okay you did it, or whatever. To me, forgiveness means it's not okay. It did hurt me. It does matter, but I still release you from it.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just like it did matter. It did affect me. I had to go through a lot of shitty situations because of
Yeah.
the impact of that. But I love you so much. And we're going to build this foundation one step at a time here. And that's been a series. I mean, I'm 33, I'd be 34. And that started when I was like 16 years old. And having those relationships and just telling your dad, like, when was the last time we sat there and just told them something, I love you. And I'm just so thankful you're in my life right now. Thank you for being in my life. And just, thank you for doing this walk of life. Doesn't mean I take advice from them. It doesn't mean that I can't have healthy boundaries. Just because we share DNA with somebody doesn't mean we have to be around them. And there were times in our relationship where I said, Dad, like right now, the way you are right now, it's unhealthy for me. So I'm gonna have to limit my exposure to you. It's not my fault, but until you do this, I can't be around you for more than a very maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. And it's not because I don't love you. It's just that I have to be healthy and I want to be the man I'm meant to be. And the way you're talking, the way you're observing, the way you're just acting, or whatever you want to call it, I want to get too specific. I
Yeah.
can't do that. And if they don't want to change, that's okay. But you give them every opportunity to. But it's okay to put, I call it guardrails. I'd rather hit a guardrail than go off the cliff, right? Or go into the ditch. So for me, what is that guardrail? So many times I see, especially motivational speaking, family problems. Hey, just because you share DNA doesn't mean you have to have a relationship with them. It does not mean that. It means you can put healthy. I call it guardrails. So for me, I put those up, and we have a great relationship, and because of that, and he knows that. And I see my dad probably 2-3 times a week. Like I said,
That's great.
you would never guess, looking at us, talking to us, you would never guess we had such a horrible past.
That's great. That's inspirational. And how is your role model? What's life with your mom?
Mom's great. In
Yeah.
fact, my wife always jokes. She goes, I could never, and we laugh at it. It's not a serious thing, but she goes, I don't think I could ever live up to your mom about how much she loves you.
Wow.
So, but my relationship with mom, and I love her. And, if you meet her, it'll make sense why the way I am, because she's always go, go, go. And so am I. And so I'm really thankful to have my wife, Amber. I know we talked about my mom, but she's always going. Like, she'll work till she can't work no more because she just loves being productive. But my wife, I love her because she grounds me. Dave, you can stop today. You can say,
Yeah.
Dave, it's 4 o'clock. You can stop. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. No, it's great. I mean, I really appreciate you opening up, Dave. I know that's not easy. It looks easy, because you make it look easy. But I know that's not easy. But I know that you're the kind of person that wants to help people, and hopefully that just helps one person, because your energy is contagious. It's great, and I appreciate it. It's you're certainly inspirational, and that's what we look for. We look for, can we inform? Can we educate? Can we inspire? And you are a golden example of all three. Congratulations to you. I'm proud of you. I don't know you well enough to say I'm proud of you, I feel like, but I am. I'm proud of you recognizing your role and overcoming a lot, because I don't think a lot of people can overcome some of those situations. And for you to recognize the good in, like, for example, your parents, is amazing. And
Yeah.
you're 33, going on the wisdom of a 70-year-old, and but you have the energy of a 15-year-old. It's great. So congratulations, Dave. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Steve, appreciate it, man.
Sure.
This is not as good as it gets.
Right.
This is
Right.
just the beginning.
Good for you. Good for you. So, all right. So if you want to read his book, can someone still find Never Complete?
Yeah, if you go on, Amazon,
Okay.
you can find it in Barnes and Noble. I think at least it was on there at one point.
Okay.
Obviously I stopped speaking. I don't know if they took it off the shelves because of
Hmm.
because I don't really speak anymore. But yeah, if you just type my name, David Schaub, Schaub, or put Never Complete. I'm sure there's other things that are Never Complete that are because obviously they go
Right.
by order of sold and whatnot. So if you
Yeah.
put my name in, you'll find it in there.
Great. And if someone is interested in N2 publishing, should they email you, call you? I have both. Do you want me to give those out?
Yeah, go for it.
Your phone number is 716-512-0184, 716-512-0184, or david.schaub, SHAUB, at,
SCH.
what did I say?
SH.
SH?
So it's
SCH.
David
I
dot
just
shop
misread. Yeah.
SCHAUB at n2pub.com.
n2pub.com. That's N, the number 2, pub.com. So one more time, david.schaub, SCHAUB at N2, the number 2, n2pub.com. His podcast is Western New York Entrepreneur. The guy is busy, but reach out, connect. He's a connector, and he's doing great things for not just the business community, but for human beings. And for that, we're thankful. So once again, thanks for joining us, David. Appreciate you, and look, congratulations on your success. And I look forward to watching and being as you succeed a lot more. You're a young man with a long way to go. So way to go. Keep it going.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate you.
All right, that's a wrap on this edition of Sidewalk Talk. You can download, listen to any of our podcasts, any platform you want, but you can download any of them past right on our website. It's shovelthesidewalk.com. If you have a story that needs to be shared, or yourself, or know of someone that can inspire, educate, or inspire like Dave did, we have a form on the website. Go ahead, fill it out, and we will connect with you and get the story out there. Thanks again, Dave. Thanks again, anyone out there listening and watching and participating. I'm Steve Fortunato, and this has been Sidewalk Talk.